Pied Piper by Black Hole CA. Chapter 13. Eridanus. Midoriya doesn't stick around UA for longer than necessary. Of course, he wanted to gawk at the shiny building for longer than he does, but something in his stomach twists when he looks at the windows glimmering in the early morning light of late September. He's late to school by a few hours, his teacher berating him for missing class, but he does nothing further than that. No phone call to Inko, no making the boys stay late, no reassigning of their cleaning duties. Though it comes as no surprise to Izuku. It's well known to the students of Aldera Middle School that the faculty can be found slacking in several areas, especially when concerning those at the top of the class. Even being quirkless, Midoriya found use in that one aspect. But Midoriya wasn't the only student who fell under the sheltering umbrella of their grades.
Hey, shitstain!
The voice that calls out to him belongs to no other than Bakugo Katsuki. There's a sneer on his lips and venom in his eyes.
I thought you finally decided to kick the bucket.
Midoriya had faced people scarier than that of 15-year-old Bakugo Katsuki. People with real bloodlust and a real determination to kill him. But still, there's a bone-deep fear that washes over him anytime the boy comes around with that look in his eyes. Not yet. He'd learned to hide it better over the months as a vigilante, but it still lingered like the voice in his head. Bakugo had noticed the change in the boy as well. The teen could see the nervous fear in the other's eyes, but it was now accompanied by wavering, barely there smirks and what he'd nearly consider snarky comebacks. Katsuki doesn't reply to his response, merely narrowing his eyes at the green-haired boy and as he takes a seat at his desk and pulls out his notebook. Midoriya shifts under his gaze, only able to relax after the blonde finally turns away. Their class currently has a free period, their mathematics teacher having called in sick for the day. It's a lucky break for Izuku. It gives him time to ask the nice girl who sits across the room what he missed, and allows him to catch up on his schoolwork. But while Midoriya is making the most of their free time, he can hear whispers throughout the rest of the room. His ears hone in on one particular conversation between the two boys behind him.
I'm telling you, dude, I saw him carrying some old lady's groceries.
Midoriya can't see it when the other boy shakes his head.
No, there's literally nothing you can do to convince me you weren't hallucinating. I wasn't hallucinating.
It's a whispered exclamation of dismay.
He was carrying around her groceries on his pipe like it was a 10-bin or something.
Midoriya's pen pauses its scrawling notes.
Dude, why would a vigilante help some grandma with groceries of all things? I don't know, but I'm telling you, I saw it. I literally don't believe you. Dude, come on.
Izuku gently taps his pen against his notebook, thinking. They're talking about me, aren't they? He feels a little giddy at the thought. It's certainly not the first time he's overheard his classmates talking about his vigilante persona. Just yesterday, he'd heard a group of girls whispering on his way up to class about his encounter with Endeavor's son, in a way that had the teacher asking if he had a fever when he walked in the room.
Imagine if they knew it was you.
Something in his heart twists at the re-emergence of the caustic voice in his head. Its maw drags open, and scissors glinting in the dark as it grins.
Quirkless, Deku, a vigilante.
More voices emerge, taking on the identities of his classmates.
I guess it makes sense, a boy muses. He's always been a thorn in our sides. Now he's made himself thorn to the actual heroes, too. You think if I called the police and told them who Piper is, I'd get a reward? One voice laughs. Someone else shakes their head. Who'd get a reward for turning in someone so useless? If I punched him right now, do you think that the police would consider that self-defense against a dangerous criminal? Dangerous criminal, my ass. A girl laughs. The only thing dangerous about him is... Actually, I can't think of anything. Vigilante that's quirkless. No wonder he comes to school all beat up. It's because he sucks at it. In his lap, his fists clench, fingernails carving crescent shapes into his palms. You know why he became a vigilante, right? Bakugo's voice rises up above the others, planting a seed of fear in Midoriya's heart, terrified of the boy's next words. It's because he couldn't become a hero. In his head, their forms are nothing but silhouettes with two white teeth that cut like headlights through the dark and set his fear aflame like lighter fluid. Midoriya! The 15-year-old's head whips up, eyes blown wide, green irises blacklit by the fear in his chest. His teacher scowls at him from the front of class, unable to see the turmoil in his eyes. I said free period is over. Get your textbook out. Hilo Akazu, reblogged Apple Tree Kawaii. Octogawa. I don't know how many of you are actually aware of everything Pied Piper has done for the community, so here's a list of everything, for those who don't. Pied Piper has fought and captured countless drug dealers, countless thieves and robbers, an arsonist, multiple kidnappers, multiple rapists, well-known murderers, several, took down an entire kidnapping ring, 2 drug dealer operations, evaded capture from the police multiple times, heroes multiple times. He helped my grandma carry groceries home. Octogawa. Update. He snuck into the hospital to sign the cast of a little boy he saved. Image. Young boy smiling, pointing at the signature of his arm cast. In the background stands a horrified woman who gapes at the boy. I seriously don't understand why there are so many heroes and police that hate him. He's literally helping them do their jobs. When somebody helps me do my job, I thank them. Endeavor to do good. Don't know if you knew, but it's literally illegal to use your quirk in public without proper licensing. It's been a law since the emergence of quirks. Octogawa. Show me one viable instance where he's seen using a quirk. Go ahead, I'll wait. Hashtag, it's also illegal to jaywalk. Hashtag, but we still do that anyway. Hashtag, also, not to mention I know a lot of people who use their quirks in public. Hashtag, it's not as big as a deal as everyone makes it out to be. Hashtag Pied Piper. Hashtag vigilantes. 16,743 notes. The 15-year-old doesn't stick around school for long after it lets out, instead setting out at a light jog towards home, attempting to outrun the demons in his head. He runs through the motions of the remainder of his homework when he gets there, drowning out the voices with an endless amount of kanji. When he finishes the last of it, the voices have dispersed, until only the original remains. He shoves down a quick meal, past the occasional quips it makes. He strips out of his school uniform, and tugs on a tank top that probably exposes one too many scars, before waving goodbye to his mother. He grabs a face mask from their family stash out of habit, the security and confidence it gives him acting as a form of defense from the whispering voice in his head. Piper was an unstoppable force, unwavering in the face of fear and danger. And, with his mind under siege, a little false confidence is exactly what he needs. Midoriya sets out their door at another light jog, this time towards the dojo. The trip takes the boy a little less than 30 minutes to get there.
his breathing only slightly labored when he slows to a walk outside the front windows. He pulls his face mask down to his chin as he pushes through the door, the boy spying Ch.13 from the corner of his eye. Midoriya slips off his shoes before making his way towards the woman. He pulls his backpack around where he can reach it, pulling his fingerless MMA gloves out to slip it on. "So, when does Hirano start back?" Midoriya asks, sliding next to Jiwoo as they watch a few of the other early students start in on their warm-ups. Ch.13 glances down at him from the corner of her eyes. "She starts back next week. It's been a while, so I'll take it slow with her the first few weeks." Izuku nods. "That's probably for the best." The woman eyes him. "You didn't seem surprised to see her. Did you two talk before she decided to come back?" The boy tries not to let his surprise show. Sure, he'd gotten kicked in the face when the girl had first walked in, but if he thinks back on it, he can't say he'd been too surprised to see her back. "I didn't. I did." He hadn't been expecting her to come back to the dojo. He'd expected her to find some new friends, but he'd never once thought that she might come back for some old ones. But once she'd shown up at the dojo's doorstep, he couldn't think of any better solution to her problems than the one standing before him. "I wasn't expecting it, but it didn't surprise me." He looks up at his teacher, studying the barely there glow of her freckles. "When she first left, you told me that Muay Thai was only a source of entertainment for her. And you were right, but I don't think she was ever here for the fighting. I don't think she ever will be. She had a lot of friends here that she left behind when she quit. She said so herself yesterday, didn't she?" The woman doesn't glance down at him again, merely continues observing the students still warming up. "That she did. She probably doesn't really care for the sport, but she respects it." Midoriya continues quietly. "Respects the people who do care for it. And I think that's important, that she takes our seriousness seriously." Jiwoo gives a small nod of agreement as Midoriya finishes up with his gloves and moves to set his backpack down and join the other students. Midoriya pushes the sweaty curls out of his face as he leans against the staff he uses at the dojo. "You're almost too much for me to handle now." His sparring partner for the day lets out a breathless laugh. "Don't even lie, Midoriya. You and I both know I'm nowhere close to being able to beat you. I don't even know why Ch.13 matched us up together." The 15-year-old offers the other a bright smile. "It's like starting a game on hard mode. Once you're experienced with the hardest level, it makes the lower ones seem easy." Midoriya glances at Jiwoo as she talks with one of the other students, running them through a new moveset. It may seem a little cruel to set up a beginner with someone who's been doing it for years, but she knows what she's doing. He turns his gaze back towards his sparring partner, smile softening. "Put your faith in her and she'll take you far." Midoriya pushes his way out of the dojo's door, a thread of rain rumbling in the distance. He adjusts his backpack on his shoulder and slips his face mask back on before setting down the sidewalk. Cars flash by him down the street, headlights leaving streaks of sunspots across his vision. He feels fatigue creeping up on him, today's training having tired him out. He's honestly excited to be able to get home and sleep. But oh, cruel and ruthless fate, how it seeks to make the boy named Midoriya Izuku suffer. In the distance, a train whistle shrieks, and from in front of him, another car's headlights blind him. The boy raises a hand to block the light, pausing in his stride just as something barrels into his legs. He stumbles to the side a bit, thrown off balance. He looks down, wide-eyed, at the white-haired girl that had run into him. She's sitting on the sidewalk now, after having fallen back in their collision, and she hurriedly pushes herself back up. Izuku crouches down, offering her a hand up, a worried furrow to her brow. "Are you okay?" The girl ignores him in favor of standing up herself. She keeps her head down before taking off again, right towards the road. Midoriya's eyes go wide as he springs up, another set of headlights blinding him. He swipes blindly for the girl, snagging her waist before she can make it onto the street. He pulls her towards him, holding her tight as his heart palpitates in his chest. He can feel her struggling in his hold, and gives her some breathing room, taking hold of her arms to steady her in the dim light of the street lamps. He checks her over for any immediate injuries, and upon seeing no blood, takes note of the bandages wrapping her arms and legs. There's fear swirling in his eyes, the possibilities of what could have happened fogging his mind. "You're not hurt, are you?" She must see the genuine worry flickering his eyes, because she calms in his arms before pulling herself closer, clinging to the front of his shirt. She shakes between his arms, and he hugs her gently to his chest. That must have been scary, right? Midoriya glances around, looking for anyone she might have been with. Izuku freezes, thoughts swarming his mind. What was she running from? He looks behind him, seeing a figure emerging from the alley the girl had stormed out of. The man's form is looming, beak mask glinting in the overhead street lamp. "Eddie." The girl on his arm tenses, fists clinging tighter to the front of his shirt. Midoriya quickly looks the man over. He's tall, muscular, and bald. His eyes are cast in shadow. The boy searches, but there's no noticeable mutations that could clue him in as to what the man's quirk is. If not for the bird mask, Midoriya could have mistaken him for any other Matsudafu citizen. But at the sight of the beak, Izuku recalls the words Giran had offered him. A guy named Chisaki Kai. He and some of his higher-ups are all running around wearing bird masks. "Eddie, come here. Your dad will get angry if we don't get back soon. It's already past your bedtime." Hojo Yu scratches at the skin around the beak mask covering his face. "It's annoying," he murmurs to himself quietly. "It blocks off part of my vision." He pries the beak off, letting it hang lazily in his hand as he takes a deep breath in without it. "It doesn't have to be a beak, right? Boss won't be mad if I come back with a regular one, right?" Midoriya slowly stands, unwinding the girl's hands from his shirt and gently pushing her to hide behind him. "Who are you?" Izuku calls out to the man, shielding the girl with his body. The man's hairless brows furrow into a scowl. "I feel as if that's a question I should be asking." Midoriya offers the man a scowl of his own. "Not when the girl you're looking for is terrified of you." "She's not terrified of me." The man takes a step forward, mask swinging gently in his hand.
We were on our way home when something scared her and she took off.
But Midoriya knows the fear, like the kind in that girl's crimson eyes, didn't come from just anything. He'd seen visions of that terror in Amy's eyes, in his own eyes. He's experienced a similar fear many times while growing up with an abusive best friend. But the fear in her eyes was worse. It spoke to him of untold horrors. And the bandages?
She's clumsy.
The man's voice is flat, tone serious.
Would you tell the police the same story?
The man stares at him, a look of almost surprise on the man's face.
I said she's my niece, right? Why would you call the police?
Midoriya's eyes harden.
It doesn't matter if she's your niece, the boy grinds out.
Viridescent eyes flashing in the headlights of another passing car.
It seems obvious to me that wherever you're going isn't anywhere she wants to be.
Midoriya lifts his phone from his pocket. The boy already halfway done dialing 110 when the Yakuza makes his move. He charges at the boy with a fist raised. Normally, it's something that the boy would dodge, but the little girl, Eddie, is still cowering behind him. So he drops his phone and redirects the fist, pushing it off its trajectory and countering the move with one of his own. He brings an elbow up, slamming it into the man's chin. Hojo stumbles back a bit, obviously not having expected the 15-year-old to actually fight back.
You're part of the 8 precepts, aren't you? Midoriya asks, as the man recovers from the blow.
Midoriya gently reaches behind him without looking away from his opponent, untangling the girl's fingers from the bottom of his shorts. He whispers softly to the girl. I need to protect you, okay? I need you to go hide. I don't want you getting hurt. He can tell she's terrified without even looking at her, but he feels her nod against the back of his leg before she takes off. Hojo makes a running grab for her, but Midoriya moves before he can get close enough. Midoriya throws a punch at the man, the blow missing when Hojo leans back. Midoriya would feel giddy, if not for the seriousness of the situation, because the punch wasn't the only thing the man should have dodged. The move disguises the kick that he brings up from the same side, the top of his sneaker-clad foot slamming into the man's jaw. The 15-year-old expects it to be a finishing blow. It usually is, but it isn't the man's jaw that gives under the force of Midoriya's blow. It's the boy's foot. Hojoyu's quirk was a peculiar one, and in the past it had given him trouble with the people in his life. But then Overhaul himself had come along, acting as his salvation. Now it serves him as a tool, one that he can use to help his savior. The crystals on his face retreat, dissolving back into his skin. He watches the boy stumble back, hobbling as far away as he can with only one foot. Hojo can see him holding back tears, the half of his face not covered by a mask twisting with pain. To his benefit, though, the boy doesn't actually make a sound, Midoriya instead taking to biting down on his lip hard enough to draw blood. Midoriya can't actually tell if his foot is broken or not, but he can taste copper on his tongue, and his injured foot radiates a fire hotter than the sun in his chest. The man doesn't give him much chance to recover, another fist flying for his face. Midoriya's movement is restricted with an injured foot. He's not sure if he can hold his weight, and it makes him hesitant to try for any more kicks. Izuku stumbles out of the puncher's path and dodges another swing the man throws out. He's worried to try for any counters to the Yakuza's attacks, wary of the man's quirk. It's likely that those crystals can spread out further than just his head. The vigilante slips around another wide swing. Grian said it was the higher-ups that were wearing the bird masks. If that's true, then I have to make the assumption that he's one of them, and that he's one of them for a reason. Midoriya knows he needs to end this fight quickly, but against a quirk like this it becomes difficult. I need to test the full body theory, but it needs to be some way that won't injure me too terribly if it turns out to be true. The vigilante spies an opening and springs up, sending out a flying heel kick to the other's solar plexus. The move sends Hojo stumbling back, but Midoriya can tell the moment his foot made contact that more crystals had gathered between the man's black button-up. Izuku uses his chest as a springboard, stumbling when he lands on his bad foot, the knee nearly giving out beneath him. He curses, jumping back as he tries to keep most of his weight off of the foot. It's not a hardening of the skin, he's just growing crystals out in the areas I'm attacking. Meaning, all I have to do is not let him know where I'm attacking. And however I do it, the blow needs to be a heavy one. In the distance, a train whistle cries out again, over a loud rumble of thunder. Midoriya knows that any of the punches he tries could be disastrous if he messes up the timing. The same for knee and elbow hits as well as most kicks. He's limited on his attack options with no weapons in hand. Another heel kick would probably be the safest move, since it's not likely to do as much damage if something goes wrong. But to do that, I need to distract him. On his back, the weight of his bag tells him exactly what he needs to do. The green-haired boy charges at the man, slipping his backpack off his shoulders in the run-up and slinging it directly at the man's face. Behind the bag, Izuku continues to move. Well, technically not Muay Thai, the attack he's thinking of can channel some 2,000 pounds of force into his opponent, which is exactly what he needs to help end the fight. Or it will at least grant him enough time to grab one of his phones to call the police. He plants himself in front of the Yakuza, backpack slamming into the man's nose, as Midoriya brings his knee up, leaving his bad foot to hold his weight before he drives his heel into the man's abdomen with enough force to break a baseball bat. The blow is a powerful one, and it connects against the man's fleshy stomach. No crystals to get in the boy's way. His bad foot takes another rough beating from the move, but it's worth it for the clean execution. The man doubles over, and Midoriya takes his chance to try and drive a knee into the man's stomach. But Hojo blocks the blow with his hands, catching the hit before it can do any damage. He shoves the boy back, Izuku stumbling back from the unexpected counter. Yu raises his fist again, and the 15-year-old's brain glitches. He raises a hand to defend himself. Whether it's to try and catch the blow or just a desperate attempt to block it, he doesn't know. He watches, green eyes blown wide in a few seconds, before the man's fist connects with the boy's open palm, as crystals bloom just below Hojo's knuckle line. The crystal-like protrusions go straight through Midoriya's hand, breaking bone and snapping veins. And during some delusional moment, as he's watching the man pull his hand back, ripping the crystals out of his skin, he wonders if he can find a band-aid large enough to hide it. Blood slides off the crystal's edges, pattering to the concrete as the girl cries out, running out of her spot and into the fray to try and grab his hand. The young girl's hand clutches at his, and there's an explosion of pain as the hole in his hand disappears as quickly as it come. Yellow bruises turn black and disappear completely, only to be replaced by even older ones. Weeks-old cuts open in a tear of a second before the man is ripping the girl backwards by the back of her dress. He feels the gash on his side tear open, and a 4-month-old concussion comes back to him in a rush, and the vigilante watches her red eyes go wide, the small horn on her forehead sparkling with power. Another car flashes by in a blur of red and white as Midoriya staggers to his feet, a trail of blood making it down his forehead and down his side. He reaches up to gently feel the wound on his head. His thoughts are sluggish. What happened? He stumbles into a streetlight, knees weak. The vigilante looks up, vision going double and blackening at the edges. Hojo watches him warily from a distance, the girl's bandaged wrist grabbing tightly between his hand. He can't see the tears on the girl's face, or the fear and pain swirling in her eyes. But he knows they're there, knows it like a deep-ingrained primordial knowledge. The 15-year-old stretches out a hand to her, side roaring with a fire almost as hot as the one in his chest. He wants desperately for her to take his hand, but the villain tugs gently at the girl's wrist, grabbing her attention. She looks up at the man, then back towards the vigilante. He gently tugs at her wrist again, and this time she follows, not putting up any fight. Midoriya makes to take a step forward, but his legs give out on him and he collapses. He curses as they disappear back down the alley. Through the haze in his head, he crawls for his backpack, desperate to find his other phone. I'm losing blood. The vigilante presses a hand against the gash on his side. His vision dims further, more black than anything else, as he taps at one of the contacts once he finds the phone Giran had given him. Midoriya weakly presses the phone against his ear as he waits for Sakauchi to answer. The boy tries to stand again, using one of the buildings as a crutch. He can hear the blood roaring through his ears at a near-deafening decibel. The vigilante can hear the muffled "Piper" that comes out of his phone speaker as the call finally goes through. Sakauchi, Midoriya slurs. I'm bleeding out here. Lots of blood. The boy sucks in a breath as his vision wavers. I'm sorry. Sorry. He mumbles quietly. I'm useless. One of Midoriya's legs give out again, and he takes a knee, still clinging desperately to the wall. He curses, angry tears slipping from his eyes as the once distant thunder roars ahead, and rain begins falling. It's nothing but a drizzle, as he slams the side of his fist into the wall, his blood and tears mixing with rainwater, as his vision cuts out and his mind blanks. Piper! Giran's voice filters through the vigilante's small phone speaker, as it clatters to the concrete with the boy's body. Giran pulls the phone away from his face, frowning at the device. You'll owe me for this one, kid. The broker opens the drawer at his desk, pulling out a second phone and dialing the number from memory. It rings for a few moments before someone picks up on the other end. Doc, it's Giran. I've got a favor to ask of you.